Welcome to the CJS noon lecture with Ishizaka Kenji. I'm Marcus Nornes. I teach Japanese cinema here at the University of Michigan. And today, unfortunately, I have to leave early to run to my class. So at the Q&A time, my absence will be filled by Denise and Yuki Nagayama is here as well to help out. I have a few general announcements. The first has to do with the next noon lecture, which is on November 14th. The speaker will be Professor Shinpei Ko-Ota, and his lecture is entitled Tyrannical Tigers and Endangered Cats, Why Are the Korean Scholar Bureaucrats Always So Important in Modern Japan? And next time, it will be on the 10th floor of this building, Weiser Center. Also, next month, we have a special event on the 9th. Grab this on your way out if you didn't get it on your way in. It's, great. Kataoka Ichiro, the Benshi, who's head of artist in residency gig here some years ago, is returning. Actually, it'll be his third or fourth time here. And this time, we've decided to program a set of chanbar. So, in one night, you get to see the entire history of the development of the sword film in silent Japanese cinema. And it starts with the earliest extant film in Japanese film history called Momiji Gari, which is basically filmed kabuki. And it includes some animation. It includes the earliest extant film by Japanese Americans. And then a couple classic silent film sword films. And then we end with a fragment of one of Ozu's earliest films called The Straightforward Boy. It's the first time that you see Topkan Kozo, who is the regular kid appearing in films like I Was Born By. So it's going to be an amazing night with Benshi narration. Hopefully all of them will actually have subtitles this time. We're working with UCLA on that. And accompaniment by Arwolf, who's a fixture on the Ann Arbor music scene. He's going to DJ who knows what kind of music. All right. And for those who are joining us through the webinar, webcams and mics are muted, but when the Q&A starts, we invite you to use the Q&A function during the lecture at any time to ask questions, and the presenter will try to get to as many of them as possible. There's also live transcription or closed captions on the Zoom. If you don't want them, you just turn them off with a button on the lower right corner. And if you want to know about other events coming up through CJS, check out the CJS events page or social media. Today it's my pleasure to introduce you to Ishizaka Kenji, the Toyota visiting professor for this academic year. Ishizaka-san and I go back 34 years or so. We were both graduate students. He was at Waseda, I was at USC, and I was in the middle of dissertation research when I encountered him. He was already working at the Japan Foundation as the film programmer for the Southeast Asia Institute or something like that. The Japan Foundation back then had its own little Southeast Asia unit in Shibuya, and he was programming amazing events, like constantly connected to Southeast Asia and the Middle East and cinema. And I was lucky to even be invited to sit on at least one of those as well. And then after a while, he joined the Tokyo International Film Festival in 2007. So he went from Japan Foundation to the Tokyo Film Festival, which is still on or just finished? It just was happening. He's been doing it remote, like Zoom sessions to Japan in the crazy hours of the night. And there he's the programmer in charge of Asian cinema. So he runs the whole section on Asian cinema in the Tokyo Film Festival. And for all of Tokyo Film Festival's tendency to lean on entertainment cinema and films that have shown in other film festivals but are about to be released anyway in Tokyo, his section is really important. It's probably the most important part of the festival, in fact, because it's aimed at younger film directors. They can only have 2 or 3 films under their belts before to show in this. And it means that showing at this program in Tokyo International Film Festival, it comes with really precious cultural capital for people, early career filmmakers. And they also get to engage with the industry because Tokyo Film Festival has a massive market as well. So he's been doing that while teaching on the side until 2011 when he joined Nihon Eiga Daigaku, or the Japan Institute of the Moving Image. This was the first university for cinema in Japan, started back in 1975 by Imamura Shohei, who was the gakucho for many, many years, until he passed away and was replaced by the great critic Sato Tadao. And then when Sato-san passed away or retired, it's currently being run by Imamura's son, Tengan Daisuke. But Ishizaka-san moved through the ranks until today he's the provost of this film school. On the writing side, he's always written as a critic and a scholar. He's done, as you can tell from his profile, a lot of public-facing scholarship. I count all of this programming as a kind of scholarship because it's driven by actually the deepest knowledge of Asian cinema. I would say he probably knows more about Asian cinema than anyone else in Japan, possibly actually in Asia, and thus the world. At the same time, he has a definite bent towards nonfiction, and that's something both of us have shared. He has co-written books with Harakazo. That one is actually translated into English. You've seen Harakazo's book. He did most of the work. And a book with Tsuchimoto Noriaki, which we'll be hearing about in a little bit. We always joke that he's done all of this work with, really close work with Tsuchimoto, and so he's like Tsuchimoto Kumi, and I've always been enchanted by Ogawa Productions, and Ogawa Shinsuke's on Ogawa Kumi. But we get along, and today we're going to be hearing some of his research into Tsuchimoto's work, most particularly the just astounding Minamata series. And I'll let him explain that to you. Please welcome Ishizaka Kenji.
My water. Thank you very much, Professor Nunes. 先生、ありがとうございます。Hello, everybody. My name is Ishizaka Kenji. I'm researching the history of Japanese documentary films. Today's topic is not about the Asian films, but the Japanese documentary. My main work to date has been publishing the 2 books of the interviews with 2 filmmakers. left one is the dialogue with the director Tsuchimoto or Noriaki. Is also the topic of today's talk. And the right one is the dialogue with the director Harakazuo. The right one is also available in English version. And I'm still interviewing director Hara, who is still active now. So now planning second book. Anyway, I interviewed director Tsuchimoto with a team of young people for 3 years until he passed away in 2008. And the result is the book. So today I will talk about director Tsuchimoto's Minamata series. But since I'm not a medical expert, so I will not talk about Minamata disease itself, I'm sorry, but rather approach it from the perspective of the film studies. Please see the paper in front of you for an excerpt of the director's profile and the selected filmography. I checked the films of Minamata series. Because it is a very big theme, so I have narrowed it. I concentrated down to the 3 chapters today. Focusing on the, for instance, the reverse shot between Tsuchimoto and other artists, 3 artists. I think the keyword of the whole talks are maybe ambiguity or ambivalence. But let's go through then step by step. Yeah, so chapter 0. At first, let's take a quick look at the works related to Minamata or Minamata disease in each field, excluding cinema. Regarding the literature, the Ishimura Michiko's novel, well known, Paradise and the Sea of Sorrow, our Minamata disease. She published it in 1969, and also the Ishimura-san made a new no play in 2002. Titled Shiranui. Shiranui is the name of the sea in front of Minamata. And regarding the photograph, picture picture, there are many photographers shooting Minamata in Japan, Japanese photographers. For instance, Kuwabara Shisei, he's one of the pioneers of the Japanese photographers to shoot Minamata. His photo book, Minamata Disease, published in 1965. And also, it is well known, the Eugene Smith's the Minamata, photo book Minamata published in 1955. About this, I can talk later. And regarding the painting, fine art, Maruki Iri and Maruki Toshi, husband and wife, they draw, paint Minamata. Their paintings very big, like a wall painting, and this is also very famous. Okay. Yeah, left one is Ishimura's cover of Minamata's book. And center one is Eugene Smith's photo book. And right one is Kuwabara-san's photo book, Minamata. And this is paintings of Maruki. They have some drawings, sometimes in part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is almost the abstract, almost black. And part 2 is more clear. I'm sorry, it's a not good picture, but anyway, and this is the part 2 of their paintings. And this is picture of the mother and daughter. It may be inspired by the very famous photo of Eugene Smith. Okay. I talk later. Okay. So now let's talk about film. So because I want to take about film, I like to start with the first scene and end at the last scene of the one film, Minamata, the victims of and their families. So first, let's watch the first few minutes of Minamata, the victims of their world. The first film in the Minamata series and one of the highlights, released in 1971. Written explanation about the Minamata disease issue appears at the beginning, so it's very good to understand. So please take a look at that for reference. Okay.
うちの親父水俣病だというてにもう頭から言いつけて水俣に送りなさいと入院させなさいと言ったのが本当に社長だったかな人間に一緒にしてなかったよね。この時が水俣と水俣保健所と立ち会いでここで検査をしてこれはてっきり水俣病だともう一本も外さんと自分が保証しましょうと水俣保健所も言うし泉保健所もそういうわけだ島に水俣病だって言ったら怒り出したですようちの親父がでまあそういうような頑固やったらなしかしこっちのその泉市内の世論がひどかですよ現在その世論に負けてその2人3人4人ぐらいでしょね認定受けずに死んだ人が狂い死にした人が泉市が潰れるから その水俣病であろうとなかろうと、その水俣に診察をやってくれるなという世論が持ち上がってしまったわけです。前田で鎌さんっていう人はその水俣病らしかという世論で、これを出してもらったらその泉市内は潰れるんだと、魚屋も潰れる、その漁師も潰れるんだということ、それをその泉市が書いてやんかという人間がおったわけですよ。もうその鎌さんの体をね、泉市が書いてやんかと。
Okay, so right on. Yes, I'm sorry, does not touch about the chronic matter of Minamata disease incident, but I want to analyze the film as a film. Okay, the film, as we watched it, the film begins with a very small, faint sound of water. A fishing boat is catching a mullet in the morning mist. A fisherman talks about Minamata disease around him. A Buddhist hymn is heard and the title appeared. The scene changed to a super long shot of a tiny boat floating in the ocean. With the Baroque music, very, very beautiful Baroque music accompanied. The affected area of Minamata disease are shown on the map. So little by little, we, the audience, are led to Minamata, into Minamata. At the same time, we are shocked and saddened by the fact that such a beautiful sea and such a fishing works that has continued since ancient times are being seriously damaged by poison. Knowing the fact that is not shown on the screen, it is a very ambiguous thing. The film then continues for over 2 hours. There were many interviews with people and efforts of the doctors and hospitals and the daily lives of patients and their families. And the climax is the protest struggle of patients who go to the shareholders meeting of Chisso, the company that released the poison into the river. The film was made at the time when images, sounds are still shot separately and then recorded afterwards. But I think the montage editing of the collision of image and sounds or the non-synchronization is very effective. Okay, so move to chapter 1. Chapter 1 about Tsuchimoto and Ogawa Shinsuke, Tsuchimoto Gumi and Ogawa Gumi. If I divide films into 3 categories: feature films, documentaries, and animation. What is unique about Japanese film history is that each of 3 categories has a period that can be called a golden era, in my opinion. The 1930s is the first feature films golden era, and 50s is the second one. And maybe 60s, 70s, the documentary is very good. And after 80s to the present days, as you know, animation is very much well known. I think you can understand that the feature films and animation were at their peak as an industry and were the period when works with global fame were concentrated. But there are various ways of thinking about documentaries. But there were many works that were world famous in the 60s and 70s. And famous, well-known film directors such as Ichikawa Kon, Teshigawara Hiroshi, Hani Susumu, Matsumoto Toshio, Oshima Nagisa, Yoshida Yoshishige, Imamura Shohei, and Kuroki Kazuo. They are made the feature films also, the documentaries during the period. But however, the term golden age, golden era of documentaries, which are strongly related to events in real society, is ambiguous. In other words, for an excellent documentary to be produced, it is because there are also major social problems, social issues. So it is not enough to just say, oh, it's a good movie. It's not enough. Okay, among them, the 2 documentaries masters of this turbulent era, 60s, 70s, are Tsuchimoto of Minamata series and Ogawa of Sanrizuka series. Both of them depict the distortions of rapid economic growth. The former, Tsuchimoto, deals with a big incident that the chemical factory in Minamata discharging wastewater mixed with methyl mercury into the river and destroy the marine ecosystem. Yeah. And later, Ogawa deals with the farmers' struggle against the government's decision to seize land from the residents of Narita City to build a new airport. Now it's a new Tokyo airport in Narita. Yes. Tsuchimoto and Ogawa, who depict the dark side of economic growth and share the commonality of long-term research and long-term filming, are often spoken of as a set or a pair, two masters of documentary. Yeah, it is true. But in fact, their styles and production methods are different. For example, Ogawa-san may not shoot in the way that Tsuchimoto's film, which we watched now. If you watch the Sanrizuka series, you can see that he does not take a slow and relaxed approach like Tsuchimoto. Tsuchimoto gradually leads the audience into the film and into the Minamata. But Ogawa, in the second film of the Sanrizuka series, commonly known as Winter in Sanrizuka, a bulldozer suddenly approached you head-on. The airport is under construction, but it happened all of a sudden. The audience is grabbed and thrown into the scene of the incident, without even understanding what is going on. But the audience is integrated with the farmers of Narita who are resisting the construction of the airport like a magic. This is Tsuchimoto. This is the cover of the Marcus None's book, and left side is Ogawa, not the right. Yeah, I very much inspired by this book. So thanks, Marcus. Okay, so the film style of Tsuchimoto Ogawa is different, and also there are also differences in their ideas about staff, shooting crew. Ogawa established Ogawa Productions, which was like a community of shared destiny, and continued to produce works in communal, collective style, living together. Whereas Tsuchimoto disliked to make his own production and continued to maintain an independent system, gathering staffs, one film at a time to start, and disband when the film was finished. The older Tsuchimoto was one of the members for the old left Japanese Communist Party in his student days. And after being arrested for planning armed struggle, he left the party, but still being a communist. The younger Ogawa was close to the new left in terms of the personal connections, and was attracted to Maoism in China. Maoism that the countryside will surround the city. And according to the testimony of the staff here, he often recited Mao's notebook at daily meetings. Okay, but today I will not talk about the difference between Tsuchimoto and Ogawa in detail. But I want to say rather about the production and screening system of independent documentaries as unique to this era. This period. Why were these anti-governmental documentaries, which major film companies never produced, made into such a long life series? The production costs were supported by donations from many supporters across the country. And even after completion, there were also many groups and individuals who planned screenings. So they could be screened one after another in movie theaters and non-theaters. Circular cycle of film production to screenings was established in this period. This is also an element of the golden era of the Japanese documentaries. I think that today, the filmmaker would resort to crowdfunding, and also the social consciousness documentary producers are now applying for governmental subsidies. And I think this is a global standard. But if I had suggested to the two of them, Tsuchimoto, Ogawa, why don't you apply for government subsidies? I would have been scolded at. Times has changed. Okay, so please move to the chapter 2, Tsuchimoto and Eugene Smith. That in 2020, one American film, Minamata, starring Johnny Depp, was released. The right side. Depp plays photographer Eugene Smith, and he's also one of the producers. So he wanted to make the film with a very strong intention. And the story revolved around Smith as a protagonist, telling the story of the shooting in Minamata in the first half of the 1970s. The film also features scenes and screen compositions that seem to have been inspired by Smith's 1945 photo book Minamata. And the climax is about the struggles surrounding the famous picture, mother and daughter in the bathtub. Yeah, this. I don't put it on screen. I'll tell the reason later. Just the first edition of the photo book. In fact, Tsuchimoto and Smith spent quite a bit of time in Minamata at the same time. And so naturally there are many images and the struggle of the subject and patients that are common to both of their works. Uemura Tomoko, a little girl who is a subject of Smith's mother and daughters in the bathtub, is one of them. She's also in Tsuchimoto's films and Smith's picture. She cannot speak, and maybe just with a body language. Yes. Tsuchimoto places this photo, Smith's mother and child portrait. Tsuchimoto says it's very beautiful as a Christian Pieta. But at the same time, Tsuchimoto criticized it by saying, Smith took the photograph even though the little patient didn't want it. Her body is stiff. I can see how much the girl who cannot speak and is about to reach adolescence hate it. Yeah, here we see an aesthetic clash between the two artists. Smith Smith's aesthetic seeks to elevate the suffering of the patient to art, while Tsuchimoto's aesthetic seeks to prioritize filming the relaxed everybody's daily life of a person, not as a Minamata disease victim. This is another big question that makes us think about the ambiguity surrounding art and humanity, artist's intention and humor. I would like to add one more episode to this issue. In 1998, after death of Eugene Smith, Uemura Tomoko-chan's parents requested that the photograph not to be made public. And Eugene's wife, Eileen, discussed with Tomoko's parents. And it was decided that it would not be made public in any publications or exhibitions that would be held after that. However, even now, photographers and curators sometimes debate on the meaning of making this photo public at Smith's retrospective. It's a very big question. Okay. Johnny Depp looks like the real Smith. Okay, so chapter 3, Tsuchimoto and Harakazu. Hara-san, he's over 80 years old now, but still very active to shooting. Tsuchimoto's Minamata series, which reached its peak in both quality and quantity in the 1980s, gradually slowed down after that. You can understand the many films is concentrated in 1970s. The reason for this was that while the patient struggle spread nationwide, owing to the many artistic works and the news report, but many of the struggles moved to the legal battles in court. So it becomes hard to filming, shooting directly. And also for Tsuchimoto's personal reasons, he was shocked by the collapse of the Soviet Union because he's a communist. So in the 1990s, and instead, while trying to find the hope of the world in the common ground between Islam and communism, he became an alcoholic during difficult shooting in Afghanistan in 1990s. In the middle of the shooting of the Afghan Spring, it's a very hard, and he drunken by the vodka, Soviet vodka, very heavy sake. Anyway, he became an alcoholic during difficult shooting in Afghanistan. Since then, he had very few opportunities to make films except for his personal video works. During the last decades, there are very few shootings, and after beginning of 21st centuries, sometimes he was invited, including U.S. Invited film festival, and we can continue to have his interviews. And finally, in 2008, he passed away. But surprisingly, in the same year, his mother Hanako-san passed away, aged 100. And also his son, Tsuchimoto-san, is passed away. Okay. After Tsuchimoto's death, various works about him appeared. Upper's two films is the documentaries by the younger generation in Japan, retracing Tsuchimoto's footsteps. They are released. And this big word, Bubble Trade, it's a 4 hours film by an American director, John Gambito. It was released. It's covering the damage caused by the same Minamata disease that is occurring at the site of a former US military base in the Philippines. At the end of the film, the subtitle dedicated to Tsuchimoto appears. And it's very interesting that, Mr. Lab Diaz, local film director, Filipino director, who won Grand Prix award at the Venice International Film Festival 2016 as the first director of the Southeast Asia. And he's originally a rock singer, so he's also paid tribute to Tsuchimoto by playing guitar and singing during the end credit. Okay, this is some sample. And the Johnny Depp Minamata. And regarding Hara Kazuo, and let's continue Tsuchimoto's Minamata coverage. Hara Kazuo's 6-hour-long film Minamata Mandala is coming. That released in 2020, the same year as Johnny Depp's film. So, Hara-san said that Tsuchimoto is the starting pitcher of baseball, and I'm the relief pitcher. But the Minamata issue is not over yet, so we don't have a closer yet. For nearly 20 years since the beginning of the 21st century, the film has captured the current state of the patient who once appeared in Tsuchimoto's films, as well as the current state of their struggle. At the same time, it also contains many episodes about the patient's love lives, which were not often seen in Tsuchimoto's films. In addition, Hara-san, who is at the time over 70 years old, obtains a scuba diving license and dives into the Minamata Bay to research the current condition of pollution on camera. And the individuality of Hara, who calls his own work action documentary, is also clearly evident. This film won many awards. However, what's interesting is that Hara, born in 1945, is the most important director of the post-Tsuchimoto Ogawa generation. But when he made his debut in the 1970s, he distanced himself from Ogawa Productions, declaring that I would rather filming individuals fighting alone than groups, and went against Tsuchimoto's famous stoic thesis. Tsuchimoto says that I don't film violence, sex, and death. Yeah, it's very stoic and very cool thesis of Tsuchimoto. But Hara said in the 70s that I'll do the opposite of Tsuchimoto and film all three. Yet after centuries later, he's filming the same citizens of Minamata as Tsuchimoto. Has Hara changed, or have the times changed? This is another ambiguous question that relates to ideas that go behind the artist's method. Okay, so we reach to the last scene. Yes. Please let's watch the last scene of Minamata in a few minutes. Okay, so also I analyze the little bit the thing about the patient struggle at shareholders meetings of Chisso, but the film ends with also a scene. It would be natural to end the film with the climax of the struggle at the shareholders meeting, but Tsuchimoto emphasizes the daily life of a fisherman. However, it is not a quiet sea at the beginning, but a lively sea. The whole village goes out to fish for mullet, it is really like a festival. I always feel the same emotion when I listen to music, the very famous Maurice Ravel's Bolero. I feel the same feeling of the composition as Bolero, where the piece starts very, very pianissimo with only one instrument. And after a very long journey, becomes a full orchestra at the end. I feel the same feeling as this film. However, here too, the vitality of the fisherman's work, the beautiful sea, and the reality of Minamata disease comes at the same time, at us ambiguously. And then also again Buddhist hymn overlap. The film ends with hymn. This is a song of prayer, and the beautiful skies and clouds. What's a complex final scene? Yeah. Okay, so finally, I would like to quote Tsuchimoto's word. Now, why have I been able to continue making Minamata films for so long? That's because Minamata disease has made me continue to think Tsuchimoto in my interview book. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much.
Well, hi everybody. I will field questions and comments. I hope you all can hear me up there, out in the other world. And we do have translation if we need it. So we'll start with people in the room. Anybody have any questions, comments? Yes, please.
Hi, thank you so much for this talk. It's really interesting. We've been talking in my visual studies class recently about ethics and photography and documentary film. And you brought up mother and daughter in the bathtub. Yes. And is her name Tomoko again, the daughter?
Tomoko. Yeah.
Tomoko. And I wondered if Tsuchimoto, he's made so many films about Minamata disease, if he ever ran up against a similar issue with patients or their family members asking him to pull footage of them, or or maybe what his ethical stance is towards picturing these people and then exhibiting the films.
I'm just going to say this for the group here because the masks and stuff. So she's asking a question about whether the other filmmaker, I don't have his name here, had ethical issues, ran into ethical problems when he was doing the films, and maybe a little about what his approach to ethical issues might have been.
Yeah, there are many films, so there are many patients and families is appearing in the film. So Tsuchimoto's basic method is before shooting, he want to make a communication with the patient and families. So after they approve and says okay, so he begin to shoot. So it takes a very, very long time. And it's very interesting that, he's a very stoic person, and so I said 3 taboo for shooting Tsuchimoto's don't like to shoot violence, sex, and death of other person. I explain more detail. He said, I don't shoot not the violence, but to stop and help. And I don't shoot the sex, not shooting, but want to enjoy myself. And I don't shoot the death of the other person. I'm not shooting, but pray. It's too cool, and so Hara-san is against the thesis in the 70s. But it is sure the basic thought of Tsuchimoto's shooting is with this thesis. Okay.
Thank you.
We have a question from the online audience. One is a guest who wants to know if they wanted to access this documentary, how would they access it?
DVD とかそういうことかね。ね。Compared with the feature films, it is very hard and high hurdle to access the documentaries. It's a very minor genre, and but in the countries for the English speakers, some of them are released. For instance, this is Minamata, the victim and the award, released in US. And そうね、原和夫なんかは少し新しいドキュメンタリーが少しこういうものになっているものが多いですね。
He says for Harakazuo's documentaries, the older ones are harder to access, but the newer ones are a lot easier to access. Like the recent one he mentioned, like the 6 hour.
The 6 hour.
Like those types of newer ones are easier to access, usually in a DVD format.
But I have to say, sorry, it is still hard to access the Japanese documentaries.
Does our library carry it? The one that you showed? No, the one that this one that you showed.
Yeah,
that's this one?
And this is from the Ask With Library.
Got it,
And
got it. So it looks like it's at the library too.
And a lot of Tsuchimoto's films should be available either in Ask With or in the Donald Hall collection.
Got it, got it. How about other questions from this audience? Thoughts, comments? Yes, please.
I'm really wondering.
Speak to them.
Okay, so I'm very curious about what the personal reflections of the people of Minamata have been as a result of their being filmed or being the subject of so much filming and attention, I guess, over many years, throughout their lives. So I'm wondering, are there some figures who have been in the earliest films and the latest films, and kind of their life has been intertwined with the documentary filmmaking? And then is there some people who started and said, no more for me, or some people who joined late, or can you talk about this a little bit?
ずっと長く被写体になっている人が、
または途中から入った方とか、反対に途中で辞めた方とか、その被写体になった方々のリスポンス取られることに対してリスポンスについての質問。
そうですね。これ結構難しい問題で、それぞれの、いろんなケースがありますね。
So there's many cases, obviously.
でずっと続けて小さい時からもう原さんの映画の今までもうかなり高齢になってる今もずっと被写体になってる人にとってはその映画に撮られるってことは撮られるっていうことを超えたなんかミッションみたいなねそういう感じを持ってるんじゃないかと思いますけど。
So he says that there are people who were like kids in like the early films and then still appear in like the Harakazu documentary as kind of in their old age. And he said for those people there's kind of a mission to be filmed and also kind of a mission that's kind of beyond filming.
このね事件のこと自分のことをこう社会とか世界に知らしめるっていうかね知らせるっていうミッションを感じてらっしゃるんじゃないですかね。
He thinks these people have feel their mission to show kind of their life, their experience of the disease, to make it public, and he's using shirashimeru kind of like put on display, rather than just like please be aware, like forcing people to kind of see the disease and what continues to happen.
ただねそういうまた違う意見もあってそのスミスのね撮った上村さん一家はまあ途中でもういいでしょうっていうねことで封印してくれということになったのでだからまとめ総括はできないですねこれは。
He said obviously what he mentioned earlier of the Tomoko's parents and the photograph by Eugene Smith and how they kind of wanted to distance themselves and didn't want the photos being public. So he said it's hard to kind of make a kind of broad like statement about how these people are reacting, but he's saying each individual has kind of a different relationship, whether it's being filmed for film or filmed for photography.
ただ写真で世界に水俣病のことが知れ渡ったのは確かでそれは上村さんも十分理解していてだからなんていうのかな抗議というよりももうそろそろいいでしょうみたいなことだったみたいですね。
He says the parents understand like kind of the importance of how that photo helps spread this awareness about Minamata around the globe. So they're not denying that, but they're also at a point when they asked for it to be removed from the public that like their feelings like, well, it's probably okay now not to have that picture be kind of the representative. Then less, and the way he's explaining it is less like we don't want this ever to be. It's more like we've served our purpose. We've done our time.
それで、ジョニー・デップのね映画が日本では公開され同じ年に公開されましたけど、
So the Johnny Depp movie was released at the same year.
でやっぱりクライマックスは絵のことになっちゃってでその後ご両親がインタビュー受けていて、なんかね複雑な顔をしてたというニュースは見ました。
So he said he saw a news report about because the Johnny Depp movie ends on that photograph, like mentions the photograph, and the parents obviously saw the film and had kind of a complicated reaction to the fact that the photo, like the film ended on the photo, and he saw a news article that kind of talked about the parents who were interviewed after this film was released.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have another question from online. Thank you for your insights in Tsuchimoto's important documentaries. Why did the change in filming style for his last two Minamata films? I observed some of this filming, which I believe he filmed almost completely by himself using non-professional handheld video cameras. So why the change in his style, do you think?
土本のスタイルが変わった。
土本のスタイルが、この質問だと、最後の方の映画は個人で一人で、
そうそうね、
小さなカメラで撮ったっていうのが、そのなんで、そのスタイルが変わったのか、前はクルーがいるのに、完全に一人でっていう。
そうね。やっぱりね体調が悪くなって、なんていうのかなインディペンデントとはいえクルーを組織してみんなで水俣へ行くっていうスタイルができなくなったというのがやっぱり90年代以降は大きかったと思いますね。 ね。でその代わりに自分と奥さんとで2人で旅をして小さなビデオカメラを回すっていうことになったんですね。
He says it's mostly due to the fact that he was ill, he was sick, and did not have the capacity to organize a crew, even though an independent film crew would be much smaller than like a blockbuster mainstream film, but he no longer had the capacity, especially after the 90s, and so it ended up being him and his wife kind of traveling around and kind of shooting on their own independently.
Other questions? Yes, please.
How did the Japanese government respond to these films over time?
つまり高度経済成長の時代っていうのは国も熊本県も非常にこう消極的だったんですよね、この水俣病への対応がね。しかしもうこれは明らかになって以来、むしろ今では例えばそのいろんな役所ガバメントオフィスで新入社員にこのビデオを見せるとかね、そういうこの映画土本の映画を見せるとか、逆にそのなんていうんですかね、環境破壊に対する見方をちゃんと教育するようなテキストに今では使われているということです。
He says that kind of during the high economic growth period of Japan, the state, whether it was the federal state in Japan, national state, or Kumamoto kind of prefectural state, they're very much kind of hands off. They were not eager to address this issue. But after the Minamata disease issue became very public and aware, they actually kind of lead into it. And then now like in 2024 contemporary period, he says that the local governments are very much focused on providing strong education for global environmental issues to their new governmental like hires, like people who get hired by local municipalities as kind of public servants, and they actually show the film you saw clips from today, Minamata, the victims and their world, as like a textbook, so that they understand the history and effects of it.
これも複雑で、つまり水俣市の人口の多くは窒素の社員とかね、関係者家族だったりするわけです。それでだからこれだけダメージをみんな窒素が悪いことをしたっていうのは分かってるんだけど、いまだに窒素は水俣にあって多くの人が雇用されているというね、そういう複雑な状況がいまだにあります。
So it's kind of a complicated relationship because Chiso, the company that caused the Minamata disease situation, is a really big company in Minamata City and is one of the biggest employers and still hires a lot of people. And so there's a very intertwined relationship with the local community, and the people who get hired and work there also know that the company did kind of this bad thing, but also the local economy kind of relies on them.
大きい企業がね来るとよく城下町って言うんですけども、そういう特に貧しい地域はその企業に依存するっていうかね、そういうことは昔からありますね。
So he said, this is kind of a normal situation where a big company comes to kind of a small town and the town sort of develops around it, and the local community is kind of reliant on their existence no matter what they do.
ちょっと話を広げますけども、水俣ってのはつまり九州のウエストコースト西岸西岸で、九州の西岸っていうのはですね、昔から江戸時代から非常に貧しい地域で、例えば隠れキリシタン、つまりビショップがやってきてみんなキリスト教に改宗して、しかし弾圧されたっていうのも、この地域ですね、九州の西側。
So he wants to kind of expand the narrative a little bit, kind of look at it kind of in a broader sense, and he mentions that the west coast of Kyushu, where Minamata is, has historically, since like the Edo period, been a very poor, historically poor community. And if you think about Japanese history, it's also where a lot of the sort of Christians who are called Kakure Christians, hidden Christians, who were kind of ostracized by the Japanese government for being Christian. A lot of them also kind of exist here in this area. So the area has kind of a complicated history of kind of oppression and poverty.
映画で言うとマーティン・スコセッシの「サイレンス」っていうのが
So
ありますけ
Martin
ども
Scorsese's The Silence, I'm sure some of you have seen, it depicts kind of these Christians who were kind of fleeing a persecution.
あれを見るとねよくわかります九州
He
西側の
says,
状況って
if you want to understand kind of this history of west coast of the Kyushu region in Japan, that film is kind of a good starting point to understand Silence by Scorsese. So, a good introduction into kind of understanding that history and background.
ていうか明治以降ね19世紀からは唐之さんっていうね娘を売ってアジアの町でプロスティチュートをさせるというでそのミドルマンを描いたのが今村昌平の「税源」っていう映画がありますけどもこれもやっぱり九州の西側の話。
So there's a film by Imamura Shohei, who, if you guys can remember, started the film school that Ishizaka Sensei is the provost of. He has a film called Zeigen, which focuses on the Meiji period and these people called Karayuki, who are sort of kind of the middlemen who sell daughters and young women into sex work. And so this film also shows kind of the history of this region, kind of in the Meiji period.
だから水俣シリーズもこれだけじゃなくてもう少しその地理的なねことを、映画を通して考えると少しいろんなことが広がってくるっていうこともありますね。
And he says it's actually interesting to think about Minamata kind of not just focusing on the disease itself and kind of what happened, but think about the geography and thinking about where it is and the history of that location kind of helps contextualize it in a different way.
It's kind of interesting too that he used Buddhist music then.
Yes,
if
yes.
the community was, at least in part,
Yeah.
Christian sort of refugees in a way. That's sort of interesting. I have another question. To your knowledge, did Tsuchimoto ever encounter Eugene Smith? And then the second part of this, I don't know if it's the same question, did he comment on the reversal of Tomoko's photograph? I'm assuming he means Tsuchimoto, but I'm not sure.
土本さんは、その友人先生と直接面識があったのかあったことがあるのかということと、その智子さんの写真を公開しないっていうことに対して、土本さん自身は何か考えるものということがあったんですか？
直接会って話をしたりってことはなかったようですね。ただお互いに同じ場所にいてあの人も撮影してるなみたいなことはあったみたいで。
He says that it seems like they never had a direct sort of engagement or conversation, but they were in the same place, kind of shooting. So it was like, oh, look, someone's also shooting over there, kind of distance, but kind of knowing each other's existence in the same space.
それは晩年の千茂さんと原さんも同じ状況のだからアーティスト同士ってねあんまり仲良くしないんですよ。
And he said that relationship is kind of the same for kind of the later years of Tsuchimoto and Hara Kazuo, and he's saying that a lot of artists don't actually get along that well, so they're kind of like to keep their own distance from each other, but they recognize they exist.
But maybe each other respect.
Yeah, they respect each other, but they're not friends.
Okay. スミスの写真の封印については直接聞いたことはないんでね、ごめんなさい、ちょっとわからないです。
He said he's never asked him about the photo, like what he feels about taking it out of the public eye, so he doesn't really have an answer for that.
We have one last question and a couple more minutes. This is a longer question by Lita, who asked the first question. Lita asks, so the documentarian who focused on Minamata, that would be Tsuchimoto, what made him so fascinated by Islam and communism? Maybe that religion could not exist under communism. What was his findings within Afghan Spring? And was he also interested in the Holocaust? I thought I saw something about that, she says. Lastly, in the Minamata excerpt that we saw, I thought I heard something about reparations. Was there ever a reparations committee? You showed that there was a reparations committee. But was that at the government level? As an American, we always discuss reparations, so it made me curious.
まずはなぜ監督がそのイスラムと
共産主義
に興味を持ったのかと、あとそのアフガンスプリングをさせた時に何を考えて考えたのかっていうこと、そして監督はそのホロコーストについて何か思うことであったり、インスパイアされたことはあったのかと、あともう一個が思想のsorry, the English and Japanese get complicated in my head. 患者さんたちに対しての経済的な医者というか保証品がありますけど、アメリカはそれについて結構黒人の奴隷制度だったりについてそういうテーマがあるんですが、それは、国レベルでやってることなのか、それともシティレベルなのか、それとも会社が独断で独自にやっていることなのかということについての質問です。また言い直すので一個ずつお願いします。
So brief answer, because we only have a couple more minutes.
イスラムの思想ですね、つまりコーランにクルアーンにあるような、つまり自分がお金持つよりも人にあげるって希釈って日本語で言いますけども、とかね、その貧しい人こそ先に幸せになるべきだみたいな、考えをコミュニズムに近いと彼は感じたようで、でそのアフガニスタンの70年代80年代って例えば女性がベールをかぶってない時代でまだ自由があったとも言われている、いろんな見方があるんだけども、そういうそのソ連が入っていった時のアフガニスタンを見たいということで取材したんですね。
So he says that the director felt this connection between communism and Islam in the fact that the Quran talks about kind of giving, like charity, and how poor people should be happy first. And so he saw that as kind of a similarity between the two. And he wanted to go to Afghanistan and think and look at Afghanistan kind of after the Soviet Union sort of comes in, because there's many ways to kind of look at that area. Because at that time, if you think about it, it could also be seen as an era where wearing a hijab wasn't as strict or expected, and so he wanted to be there to kind of observe what's happening there.
ところが取材した時にはもうソ連が撤退する時で、そうするともうその後は内戦というかね、になっちゃって、その混乱の中で彼も体を悪くしちゃったっていう。
But unfortunately, when he got there, the Soviet Union was already about to leave, and after that, there was a lot of kind of civil war, like internal political difficulties, and he got sick because of kind of being in that midst of political chaos.
Okay, second question は、
ホロコスト
ホロコスト、はい、はい、ホロコストの映画を撮ったクロード・ランズマンという監督がいます。ショアという映画を撮ってね、彼と土本は親交がありました。それから広島と長崎についての映画も土本は撮ってますので、第二次大戦のその広島長崎アウシュビッツにはもちろん大変な関心があって作品も残っています。
So, the director did have a lot of interest in World War II because he had a close ties with the director who made Showa, and Tsuchimoto himself has made films about Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So World War II kind of imagery and political issues are kind of always been a part of his filmmaking and kind of consciousness.
それから窒素への裁判ですけども、これ今全国各地でいろんなところで起こっていて、というのはみんな水俣から移動した人もいるのでね。でこれはですね、国や県を相手にする場合と窒素に直接訴える相手にする場合と、これは様々ですね。
So he says that with reparations, it's happening all over Japan, partially because a lot of the victims have kind of moved outside of Minamata City, and there's also kind of different paths to reparations because some people will kind of sue Chiso, the company, directly, while some people sue the state and sort of go that path. So it's not like one path for reparations, but it's being people are pursuing it in different ways.
I recommend watching the Harakazo's movie. He's depicting the presentation such a court battle.
Oh yeah, Harakazo's movie represents the case.
All right, join me in thanking you for your amazing presentation. I want to say I found it very accessible as a non-film person. I felt like I could follow along almost so slowly like the bird and the sea. I just thought it was very beautiful. So thank you very much. Thank you.